we're dealing with a value issue. Jesus tells us where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What we treasure, then our behavior, our heart, our actions will follow. Too much and too many times, too many people are not treasuring God. They're not ultimately valuing Him. And therefore, they're not valuing what He has created. They're not valuing His creation of the family, His creation of the institution of marriage.
And we are back on The Narrative. Mike Andrews and Aaron Baer, joined now by Mark Merrill, who's the founder and president of Family First, a national nonprofit organization that provides programs and online resources dedicated to helping people love their families well. He's a speaker in front of all sorts of groups across the nation and has given family-focused messages with major companies, NFL teams, organizations, and government bodies. He's been married to his wife for 34 years, and they live in Florida. And we are grateful to have you on the podcast today. Mark, thanks so much for the time and for being willing to talk with us about specifically one of your organizations, All Pro Dad.
Hey, Mike, Aaron, great to hang out with you guys again. Thanks for allowing me to be with you.
Well, you've got an exciting event coming up in Columbus here in just a couple of weeks with All Pro Dad. I think before we get to that, though, can you just set the stage a little bit and tell our listeners what All Pro Dad is and the mission of that organization?
Sure. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of Family First, which is our national nonprofit organization established in 1991. Can you believe it? So about 35 years ago. And we get to reach families and dads and kids all across the nation through online and on the ground. Online through pretty much every channel and platform that you can think of, and then on the ground through a couple of different experiences that we have. One of those you just met. We have NFL and college stadium events across the country called All Pro Dad Experiences. And then we also have our All Pro Dad chapters, and right now we're in over 1,600 public and private schools across the nation. Quite a few in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the most practical resources that you're offering dads, or ways that you're seeking to come alongside dads and help them lead their families well?
Well, online, really practical resources. We have something called the Play of the Day, which is a real quick read. It's 1 minute long, takes to read it, and then people can do a deeper dive by listening to one of our All Pro Dad podcasts with our awesome team here. We also have a lot of videos on YouTube, for example, and a lot of other resources on our social media platforms. And so we always challenge men to spend a minute a day by reading that daily email and then take a deeper dive into one of those other resources. An hour a month attending one of our All Pro Dad chapters in a school, and then 1 day a year attending one of our All Pro Dad experiences at an NFL or college stadium.
Well, I know that those smaller groups, the local groups, are really important to what you're doing, but you mentioned your team and some of the resources you have. I think it's worth talking about some of the names that are associated with your group and some of the notables that are talking about fatherhood along with you. Can you list some of former professional athletes and things like that are part of your work?
Yeah, Mike, we found a great way to really reach men, especially, is to find out where they are, where can we meet them. And so many years ago, Coach Dungy and I found that a great place where family and faith intersect is really in football stadiums. And so we use the platform of sports really to reach men and help them to be more engaged in their kids' lives. And so Coach Dungy and I met back in 1997, and there's a story behind that as well. But and he's been very involved as our national spokesman for 28 years now. And then we have a lot of other NFL and college players and coaches that stand with us and speak out for us. Names like Dabo Sweeney at Clemson Tigers. We have Coach Dave Canales at the Carolina Panthers. We have guys like Colt McCoy in Texas. We've had Jason Witten involved in speaking out at our stadium events, which a former Dallas Cowboy. Uh, we have we have a lot of oldies but goodies of guys like Mark Richt, the former coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, and other coaches in the state of Florida, like Coach Norvell. We have guys in pretty much most of the markets that we've been a part of that are really speaking out on our behalf. And so we're really grateful for all that they've done. Guys like Benjamin Watson, who is with the Georgia Bulldogs as well. And the list can go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, it's interesting right now. Obviously at CCV, we've been putting a lot into this marriage and family conversation. And it feels like right now in the country, there is a renewed focus on this, or at least a renewed understanding of how important marriage and family is to the future of the country, right? You're hearing all the conversation around fertility rate and but also an interesting conversation around poverty and things like that. And I think one of the reasons at CCV we were so happy to partner with you guys and so grateful that you guys wanted to come to Ohio was because we do see a loss of appreciation, a loss of understanding of the importance of fatherhood and the importance of really building out a vision for young men of what a good dad looks like, right? Whether that's been lost, the importance of that has been lost, or just folks don't emphasize it as much anymore. Why do you guys feel like now is such a time to be investing more in dads, not just on the individual level, but on the cultural and societal level?
Well, I do see, Aaron, you hit the nail on the head. We really need to give men, especially dads, young fathers, a really picture of what fatherhood can look like. And what we found over the last 35 years of doing this, we found that there's not a lot of dads from a percentage standpoint that desire to be a really crummy dad. They don't want to be involved in their kids' lives. But it's really just the opposite. We find so many men that we're connecting with, even dads that aren't custodial parents, aren't able to live with their kids. They desire to be the best dad that they can be. They want to be a hero to their kids, but they just don't know how. They either didn't have the toolkit when they were growing up. They didn't have someone showing them by example what this looked like, or they just never, had the tools that they were able to develop in their sphere of life. And so we found that what we really need to do now is just give dads the hands-on tools that they need day in and day out to move the ball down the field one day at a time, 1 yard at a time towards that goal of becoming what we call an all-pro dad.
So, Mark, you mentioned you guys have been doing this for 35 years. What are the challenges dads are facing today compared to when you first got into this work, or maybe even when you first started doing this with Coach Dungy in the later 90s? What are the things you're seeing as you're talking to dads and you guys are doing this work all over the country that is unique about the experience for dads today, maybe compared to 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, I think of it from a couple perspectives, Aaron, and it's a great question because one has to do with the expectations of dads today. I think there is a greater expectation of dads than there was 35 years ago when we started this work. Previously, it was always an expectation as they would be a protector and be a provider, and just over the many years of the last 35 years, we found that, dads are being asked to step up and do so much more, to be there for their kids, to be an encourager, a nurturer, to be the example of the kind of man that their kids need them to really be engaged in their life, and not just on weekends, but day in and day out, before work, after work, taking their kids to school, picking them up from school sometimes, maybe even cooking dinner, having other household responsibilities. So it seems to have really increased from that perspective. The other challenge and the big thing that has really changed that you guys have seen, I'm sure through your CCV study that you did, but also in your regular work, is we're seeing this massive download, if you will, of information and technology into our kids' lives. And, you look at books like The Anxious Generation, and there's a number of books that have come out over the years saying, this is how technology, how social media and other things that are really, really influencing our kids and really, really almost altering and influencing in a big way how they think, how they process, how they live their lives. And so that technology was developed, to make our lives easier, to encourage us, to help us in so many ways. And it does do that. But also we're more technologically connected like never before. But oftentimes, dads especially are more relationally disconnected from their kids like never before. And so there's this ongoing tension of trying to get our kids' attention and making sure we're speaking into their lives more than others who, strangers, if you think about it, online are speaking into their lives. So I think that's another challenge that's facing dads today.
Yeah, Mark, hearing you outline that, it seems like some of this is relatively simple in terms of just being present and involved in your kid's life, but yet it can feel so overwhelming to those dads that you're working with. I'm curious, what do you see happen? Like, when does the light bulb go on, or what is it like when the light bulb goes on for these guys that they finally see, hey, I actually can do this? How does it change their sort of overall interactions with the program and with their kids?
Mike, I think when I see the light bulb goes on, it especially occurs at one of our in-person experiences, the experiences that I shared that we have in schools across the nation, but also in stadiums. And when I've attended one of these chapter meetings in a school, and I see a dad stand up and share, which they do every single meeting, why they're proud of their child, and they share that in front of all the other men and kids in that school cafeteria. And to see him stand up and sometimes with tears in our eyes sharing how proud he is of his child, and then the child's face beaming with a big smile thinking, that's my dad, that's my hero. That's when I see the light bulb starting to go on, when he sees the reward of speaking truth and speaking life into his child. That's when that light bulb often goes on.
Mark, what I love about that, and I want to hear more about what you guys are doing in the schools, because I think when we're looking at the things like the Family Structure Index that we released, and I think some of the more concerning numbers to us outside of the fertility rate are the marriage rate, right? So in Ohio alone, it's only 53%, 54% of prime-aged adults are married today, but also how late folks are getting married, right? So there's been a lot written about marriage being delayed more and more. And so a part of the reasons we wanted to see you guys come to Ohio, and especially because of your work in public schools, is we need to reinstate marriage as a good thing in life, as a goal of life, especially for young men, right? This is a little bit of actually Brad Wilcox, who first connected us, talks about marriage should be the cornerstone of life, even though now we look at it as the capstone of life. So how do you guys, what I'll talk about a lot is we need to change that cultural imagination of young men and young women too, but we're talking about young men here, to view marriage as not just like a nice thing for one day in life, but hey, this is something I aspire to. This is something I want in life, and I'm going to order my life around pursuing that good thing of marriage and fatherhood. How do you guys go about doing that in schools today?
Well, I'm going to try to see how I can summarize this because that's a question that we could spend hours and hours, maybe days on. And let me give you the big picture summary, and then I can answer the specific question. I've been really giving this a lot of thought lately and thinking like what has happened over our culture during those decades when, like you just said, we're seeing marriage rates plummet and out of wedlock births skyrocket. Um, what's happening there? What's the statement behind that? And as I was pondering it and thinking through it, I think what we're dealing with is we're dealing with a value issue, and not values, a value issue. And Jesus tells us where your treasure is, there your
Mhm.
what? There your
Their
heart
heart
will
is,
be
yeah.
also. And so what he's saying, what we treasure, then our behavior, our heart, our actions will follow. And too much and too many times, too many people are not treasuring God. They're not ultimately valuing Him. And therefore, they're not valuing what He has created. They're not valuing His creation of the family, His
Mhm.
creation of the institution of marriage, of parenting. And so, I really think that is so important today because we can just talk about, well, here's the problem, and young couples aren't getting married because they're having kids out of wedlock, or they're cohabitating, or they're not getting married until later in life. In my mind, I really think like if I'm putting myself in the shoes of some of those folks, which I really can't, but if I try to, I think, you know what we really need is we need a better value proposition. We
Mm.
need to say marriage is so awesome and it can be so joyful and so fulfilling. You don't want to miss it. Like
Yep. Yeah.
don't don't go for second best. Don't go for the consolation prize. Go for the win. And we need to show them why that's so important and then how they can have a great marriage. So that would be my big picture answer to the question.
Well, honestly, Mark, what I appreciate about that, man, is all of these things, they all build on each other, right? Like we don't get to this place where you see, these types of marriage rates, these type of fertility rates overnight. We get to these places with
Yeah.
all of these subtle messages repeated again and again and again about what does the good life look like, right? I
Mhm.
mean, and we it's easy for us to rag on, like pop music or rap music. Oh well, it's all about sleeping around and money and all. Yeah, obviously that plays a role in it. I think obviously media and all those things play a role in it. But you know, Mark, what are you even seeing? You guys work kind of in both worlds. You work in public schools, but you also see work in the churches right now too, right? You guys interact with a lot of Christians and things like that. What are you thinking that the church is getting wrong in the messages we're sending to young men today, and about marriage and family and fatherhood?
Well, I think the church and many churches are getting many things right, but I think for all of us as believers, I think the most one of the important things we do is not to express our opinions, but what would Jesus do, and what did he do, and what does he continue to do? And what we like to think of is I like to think of ourselves as domestic missionaries.
Mm.
And basically, what does a missionary do? Well, they meet the person or persons where they are. They travel to their country or where they live. Then they engage them with what they need. It might be food, clothing, shelter, medical supplies. And then they do what? Well, once they've engaged them, they've met them, they've engaged them. Now, what do they do next? After they've earned their trust, then they try to move them towards trusting them as a provider of this need and to trusting God, and they share their faith with them. And I think that more and more we need to speak in people's native language.
Right.
Those you guys have heard the term nuns and the different studies that are out there. The nuns, based on the Pew Research Center study a number of years ago, and then validated once again in 2025. The Pew Research Religious Landscape study showed us that um, 36% of those surveyed characterized themselves as nun when they're nuns. When they're asked the question, "What religion are you?" and it had answers like a Catholic, Protestant, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, and then what? None of the above. That they're religiously unaffiliated, and so over 36% said self-identified of millennials and Gen Z said, I'm none of the above, hence the term nuns. And so this is a group of people that um, kind of they have blurred lines between fact and feeling, truth and lies. They don't attend church, but they're spiritually open. So I think there's a great opportunity, not just with them, but with other people that really are searching, even people within the church walls that are searching for for ultimate truth that we know comes from God and His Word. And so that's a real great opportunity for us to speak into those lives. And I think, again, speaking in their native language versus with Christianese or other things that they might not understand.
Yeah.
We're basically truth translators, perhaps.
Well, and fatherhood seems to be an area where you can translate the truth of the gospel pretty well because, you know, Mark, I'm interested in your take on this here. Having a bad dad might bring some shame on your own fatherhood journey, right? Or that sense that you don't know what you're doing because you didn't have the example. But the gospel seems like it can speak into that it can cover those lies and it can equip you in its own way to be the dad that your kids need him to be.
Exactly. And, we have the perfect father. He's the model. And looking at the relationship between the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I mean, you can't get any better than that. And so, yeah, I think what we do, what I really need to be doing as a father, I don't need to be following just someone else's example because I think they're a great guy. The Apostle Paul says, "Follow my example as I do what? As I follow the example of Christ." So don't follow me, but only follow me if I'm
Mhm.
following the example of Christ. So that's really what my goal and desire is, to do it with all my failures, all my stumbles, all the fumbles of the old football that I've made in my parenting journey. It's really to continue to move the ball down the field 1 yard at a time, day in and day out, towards that goal of being an all-pro dad. And the only ultimate model that I can look to do that is Christ Himself.
Amen. Well, we teased at the outset here that you've got an exciting event coming up here in just a couple of weeks, and hopefully we've had everybody at home on the edge of their seats waiting for more information on that. But June 15th, an event at the Ohio State University in Ohio Stadium. This sounds like an awesome day. Can you just talk us through what all's going to go on and what that event is?
The Ohio State University. That is definitely where it's going to be. And yeah, we're going to have a fun event. And again, it's called our All Pro Dad Experience. And this will be, I think, we've done over 145 of these events across the nation and over the last 30 years or so. And this one will be on June 15th in the evening. And so dads and kids will gather, as well as father figures. We'll have some moms there too. And it'll be about a 2.5 hour event where they'll gather. They'll hear from Coach Day, head coach of the Buckeyes, and of course, former coach and Lieutenant Governor Tressel will be there speaking as well. And I've even heard some rumblings that perhaps Governor DeWine, will be there as well. So, and our whole All Pro Dad team will be there, and it's going to be that event where they'll hear from those speakers, but also, and and really a fun thing is it's going to be an interactive experience on the field where dads and kids rotate through 4 different stations. And each station, they do a drill and have some fun with one another that's interactive. And then they learn to have a life lesson at each of those stations. And so we found over the years, this is almost already a sellout crowd this far in advance. So if folks haven't gotten their tickets yet, they'll want to make sure they do so if they want to join us. But it'll be a meaningful and memorable experience that dads and kids won't want to miss.
I'll be there. That'll be great.
Aaron, are you going to show your girls how to dot the I? Is that
exactly right?
Since it's at Ohio Stadium?
That's right.
Well, Mark, this is awesome stuff. We're so glad that your organization's getting more involved here in Ohio and hosting this event on the 15th. For anybody who wants more information about All Pro Dad and what you all do through that organization, can you give us a website and any place they need to connect with?
Sure. allprodad.com/win. allprodad.com/win. And that not only will give them the information on how to get more resources or information relating to registering for the event, but also tons of resources for folks in the state of Ohio. And we have an awesome Responsible Fatherhood initiative with the state, and it's all about winning the everyday. And so we're thrilled about that and can't wait to continue our expansion in the great state of Ohio.
Mark Merrill, thanks so much for all that you're doing with All Pro Dad, and thanks for the time today on The Narrative.
Thank you, Mike. And Aaron, man, you rock. Aaron's been a great warrior and servant to us, and he has just helped out in so many ways to us to expand in the state of Ohio. And to you, Aaron, and to your whole CCV team, we are grateful.
Appreciate it, brother.